Welcome back to the Boys in Motion podcast. If you're listening to this on release day, happy Canada Day. The whole crew is here. I'm Tyler, joined by the boys, Bryan and Andrew, and today we're digging into one of those topics that every athlete hits eventually, the failed workout. You know the ones. You bonk, you bail, your legs just leave the chat again and again, but what do you do next?
Yeah, happy Canada Day. This one is definitely an important topic to tackle because it's easy to spiral when you're training and it doesn't go to plan. One off day can mess with your confidence. I know last week it happened to me, especially when you've got a big goal on the calendar. But we've all learned a lot from these failed workouts, and it's something that definitely happens to every athlete who's pushing. So, through those experiences and some science, we're going to be diving into it all together today.
It seems like every summer I get reminded of this topic where either I start too late, run out of water mid-run, and then have to cut it short, finish the workout, and crawl my way back home. And at the time, let me tell you, it seems like the absolute end of the world and I'm not going to hit my A goal. But in hindsight, it's always a big learning moment that I can have right there in my block to be better come race day.
Yeah. So it's funny that this topic came up this week. We were chatting about, what should we talk about on the pod just over text. And Tyler, you were like, oh, let me think about this during the workout. And I typed my suggestion, failed workouts, because I failed one this week. And then you got out of the pool and you said the same thing, basically.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, wow, this swim feels a lot better than the swim I had on the weekend. And then I'm like, you know what? That's a failed workout. And then I'm like, I know, Bryan, you were chomping at the bits to get back on your workout after that attempt. So I said, you know what? I'm going to put that in the chat too. And like you said, it was meant to be because we both had the same idea. So I'm glad to talk about it. And it's something that I think everybody gets to, let's call it, enjoy at least once a block. I'm not sure about you guys, but I at least hit it once a block.
So Bryan, why don't you kick us off? Tell us what the workout you were attempting, and then maybe get the listeners kind of in the mindset that you were in during that workout and kind of what was running through that noggin.
For sure. So as many people know, I'm training for the Toronto Waterfront Marathon in the fall. And with that, I'm doing the Fit Singer 55 miles plan. So that's like the peak week will be around 80 kilometers or so, 87 kilometers. So obviously it's a lot of mileage and I'm starting the ramp up now. I think last week was about 58K total, but the weekend workout was a long run, not crazy long, a half marathon distance, but within that, it was a 12.9K at marathon pace. Now, a few mistakes were made, and you mentioned it in the intro, Andrew. I got up too late. I was dehydrated. I had drank three-quarters of a bottle of wine the night before, so I was double dehydrated. Now, that goes to another alcohol during the blocks. Is that a no-no? But I won't get into that rabbit hole. But just a few compounding factors, along with the heat and humidity getting out there later in the day versus what I'm used to, and I completely crashed out. My warm-up was great, was feeling all right. The moment that pace started to climb and I got into that like actual session of the 12.9K, I was able to hold the pace for about 4.5K or so. And then I grabbed a quick drink from a local lemonade stand. And the moment I took a few steps while I took that drink, the legs just went out from under me and I couldn't hold pace anymore. It felt like the most difficult thing in the world and it was very frustrating.
Geez, that sounds like how I race my races. But that, yeah, I could tell you I've had that feeling more than a couple times. And yeah, not a good feeling, but especially when you're trying to hit that marathon pace during a actual workout, no worse feeling in the world than that. And like Andrew also mentioned, you feel like the world is ending on that moment. You're just like, what the heck am I doing? Can I even do a marathon?
Yeah, early in those blocks, these workouts are never easy, and that's the point of these workouts. It's not comfortable to be going at race pace, and you're doing this whole block so that that race pace becomes comfortable. But I'm looking at the stats here, and I do see that drop off point, as you said, after that pink lemonade that you had. But I'm curious what your strategy was post it getting super hard, and what you made of the rest of that workout, and what you decided in the moment, because I know I've battled with that many times.
Yeah, that's a great question. I was going to ask the same thing.
Yeah, and you're right, Tyler, that is a great question because I wish I had the answers from you guys in what I should do in that moment. Because essentially, my goal was to just try to hang on as much as I could, try to push out as much power and as much pace as I could. And I just kept sort of hitting that limiter, failing, taking a little bit of a breather, and then going out at pace again, which I don't think in hindsight, is the right way to approach it. I probably should have just, scaled back the rate of perceived exertion a little bit, run on a little bit more intuition than the ego that was trying to get me to run at a certain pace or at least as fast as I could, because it was not sustainable in that heat and humidity. But overall, I think it's something that happens. I've accepted that it was a failed workout, and that's okay. And it doesn't mean that because I failed that one workout, the block is going, like, I need to reset my block or I need to reset my A goal. I think this is just part of the learning, and I just need to learn that it's not always realistic to hit that A goal depending on conditions and that sort of thing. And it's most important to just complete the mileage and just show up on that day, even if you don't, hit every single pace in stride.
Yeah, I think it's a big mindset thing, and I'm curious to see what Andrew would think about like this, like what to do after. And because for me, I think I would have just dialed back the pace like earlier, way sooner on. Like I would have just, I knew I couldn't hold it for more than whatever X amount of kilometers, one or two, and then I just would have went a lot slower for the rest of it. Even a zone two run, just keep it a easy, moderate pace. Like you said, just get the mileage in, but know that you couldn't hit that target. Obviously it sucks, but just getting out there and staying on the feet kind of more important than hitting that target for that first one, I think.
Fair. And before the master of running tunes in, I will say that I tried to keep the pace and I tried to keep the effort high. There were many times when, I had to take a literal seat on the curb for a minute just to bring the heart rate and the temperature down, where I wanted to quit and just run it all zone two because I knew I could finish the run distance. But I knew that the point of that was to push the pace as much as I could. And I had some accountability partners, which is also good. I would say that's one tool that you could use to avoid failing a workout entirely, or at least still getting as much juice out of that lemon that you can, which is I had pre-purchased 3 lemonades from a lemonade stand around the corner. There were a few kids just out on the street, so I pre-purchased 3 lemonades, and I told them I'm running around this block, and I'm just gonna wave you down when I need another drink. And so that kept me accountable to hitting the distance and actually finishing the workout, even though the pace wasn't pretty. I still got as much as I could out of it.
You just got to zoom by them.
Might need to hire them for the next BIM 5K. Sounds like they took their job quite seriously as the on-course nutrition.
That's
For
nice.
sure. They had the cups ready to go. They were ready to hand it to me. I mean, being at the condition that I was in, not able to see straight, I always just grabbed it and walked a little and then handed it back to them. So it wasn't like I was running and tossing that cup on the ground or anything. But they were really, really fun, supporters of the progress.
That's actually a great idea. Just scoping out a lemonade stand, being like, hey, I'm going to come by here 3, 4 times. Just keep handing them over. That's great. I'm going to have to try to do that.
So yeah, I'll chime in. I have two strategies for these scenarios, and it depends when either the bonk happens. So it's basically either are the conditions not ideal, whether you're tired, you're really fatigued from the week, it's super hot, something external is causing you to know that this workout probably won't be hit perfectly, Then I like to switch my marathon pace or whatever workout to more of a progression run where I start, let's say, 20 to 30 seconds slower than my marathon pace. And for the duration of, let's say, your workout that was around 12K, I work my way down to the marathon pace and just try to hit that marathon pace for about, let's say, a fifth of the workout, and then maybe try to even push like the final case slightly below. So that would be strategy number one. If it's hot, you're feeling pretty tired, to just slightly adjust it to still get that good work and working towards the marathon pace and speeding up. So that is strategy number one. But in your scenario, where you go out, it's hot, but you think you can do it, you're feeling confident, you're feeling good, and then all of a sudden it gets hard. My personal strategy, the name of the game is you want to get comfortable at whatever pace you want to race at. So I prefer to take small breaks to bring the heart rate down and chunk your workout into, let's say, 4 by 3 kilometer segments. So do 3 kilometers marathon pace, let your heart rate come back to zone 2, 3 kilometers at marathon pace, because you really want to get comfortable at what that marathon pace feels like. So that's my personal preference, but I don't know if scaling back the pace or that is the right answer, but that's what I prefer.
Yeah, I like those solutions. I think in both of those, like the way that you handled it, if you know before, like from my perspective, it was, I think, a little bit of inexperience with running under those hot conditions with, just, yeah, some of the preparation into that run was not ideal and didn't set me up for success. And in hindsight, I realized that, but going into the workout, it was my first marathon pace workout. I thought I was confident about it because I had hit my other target paces before. But I think chunking it is a really good way to do that with some structure so it can still feel successful. Because I ended up chunking it, but it was sort of on the fly, so I didn't have the structure of what goals I was trying to hit after failing the A goal of that workout, essentially. So I maybe would have walked away from that workout still feeling like it was a little bit of a success rather than just feeling like it was a total failure.
Yeah, that actually is a great point. I forgot about that. Me and John, we've done our fair share of reformatting the marathon pace workout based on conditions. I know for the spring block, we did a one in the winter, which was, we did a 2x6 with a little bit of rest in between because we couldn't hold that pace for the full. So yeah, that's a great other option, and you still feel kind of productive.
So I do have a question. Obviously, we were talking about, in this specific case, missing the target pace. But I would say there's some other ways that you might fail an effort and fail a workout. I think the one that I talked about, which was for me the most important part, is just show up, which is skipping a session entirely. A lot of people will end up skipping a session if, one, it doesn't line up in their calendar, or maybe it's a little bit too difficult, and they'll just write it off entirely rather than actually going out. So that to me is one way that you could fail a workout other than just missing the target pace like me.
I think I'm the CEO of that. I'll raise my hand to that one. If I just don't see it line up in my schedule, just skip. Bump it a week. You do it the week after. Obviously, it's not optimal and can play mental mind games on you. But yeah, I could say I've done my fair share of skipping the workouts, especially for a marathon block that I think is actually very important to get those key workouts in. I guess being on, not too speedy, let's say like the master himself, but being on both ends of, I would say a fairly successful marathon block and a mediocre marathon block, I missed a lot of those key workouts, and you could feel it come marathon day.
My hot take on this one is that if there's a week where I'm a little busy and I'm skipping some of my volume, as long as I'm hitting those key sessions, let's say I have 2 key sessions in the week and don't run any other days, I don't beat myself up too much, because those key sessions are really what, in my opinion, makes or break you hitting your A goal. And if you once in a while miss some volume in favor of those key sessions, you're still moving forward.
Big agree.
Just for some clarity, what would qualify as a key session versus something that is maybe a little bit more expendable if you need to miss it?
Yeah, so key sessions would be, Brian, in your case, that's a marathon pace effort, a lactate threshold effort, maybe later in the block your VO2 max, and then also long run in your case. That is also pretty important since you are going for a long distance, but something like a recovery run, just a general aerobic workout, those are ones that on those busy weeks, I wouldn't sweat too much if you do need to miss one of those sessions or cut it out to swap out one of those key sessions.
Well, that's good to know because yeah, it's always a battle of prioritization and training blocks. Like if you've never done one before, or if you're in your first one right now, and I've heard this through the grapevine from people like Adam, Mike, and Mark, is just like how much is involved in a single marathon training block. Not even just Fitsinger, but other training plans. It's cumbersome the amount of time, effort, number of times you just need to lace up and leave your house every week. It becomes a lot. And so given that, your number one priority every week is to hit those most important sessions, I think is helpful, especially some people training multiple sports, being able to be flexible around recovery or general aerobic runs opens the door to be able to cross train a little bit more or do the other important things that you have in life.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Forget the marathon block, just do the Ironman block, and you could do a little bit of everything, and you're good to go.
Now, Tyler, you mentioned Ironman, and actually that's something I want to touch on a little bit, because when we were spectating the Rose City Tri, I had my eye closely on the transition zone of the bikers coming onto the run course and the varying strategies and techniques people were using. And I think this is the logistics of workouts and, for example, practicing things like transitions and stuff like that. Have you ever had like a big fail when preparing for an Ironman of like trying to test out different gear, different strategies? I know trying to improve your transition times has been a big key sticking point for you. So can you tell us about that a bit?
Yeah, that's a good point. Just in general, I'll just start with saying, training for the specific race you're dealing with in your block is obviously very important. So like you said, training for transitions is actually also important, and sometimes, can make or break your time gained on either one of the sports. Like I could spend hours in the pool and gain 2 or 3 minutes, but lose it on a 2 or 3 minute longer transition, right? So with the years, I think I've learned to optimize a little bit more of the transitions, but as Mike would say, he's still trying to get my transition time down. Just keeping the mind clear and practicing more and more during these blocks is kind of the way I'm approaching it now. Is let's say the first year I was doing triathlon, I didn't even care about transition, and you could tell I spent a good evening in the tent, it seemed like. And then it got, I halved it the next year. And then now this year I'm trying to get even more efficiencies within those transition times to improve my time. I'm lacking a little bit in the pool department, so I'm trying to gain that 5 minutes in the tent. So we'll see how that goes.
Have you ever heard of somebody actually doing like a transition workout where they run through the actual transitions only a few times just to try to optimize and get a little faster every time?
Yeah, actually, I have heard of that. I've done it a couple times because it's kind of, in hindsight it's good, I think, but in the moment you feel like you're kind of wasting time because you're not getting that volume in and you're just repeating transitions, which is you feel weird doing. But actually last weekend, and actually I think they do it every Saturday in at the beach in Ottawa, there's actually a triathlon club, and they set their bikes up like a transition. They go for a very short swim. They hop on the bike and literally do like maybe 2K, and then get onto the run and do like the same lap of the run, so another 2K, and they do that a few times. So they kind of do little super sprint tries and practice their transitions, which I think is definitely beneficial for the race day.
Yeah, I would say that's big bang for your buck. But I think like transitioning this to like how this could fail as a workout is like the logistics around exercising. Like you forget something that you're supposed to be riding with, you forget a pair of running shoes, you forget your heart rate monitor, whatever it might be, you can bounce back from that during the workout, or at least have some way to still have a successful day. If you don't have shoes and you're supposed to go out for a run, that might be a little harder, but there's ways around it. Like if you forget your hat, it doesn't mean you can't go out running. You might just need to find a trail that's covered, for example. Now, logistics is one thing. The last kind of failed workout that I would say happens to me deep into a block when you're tired and sometimes dreading that run is mentally checking out and starting to like dread the workouts, dread the work that you're putting in. Because if you're in that negative space, I would count those as failed workouts myself. Just moving the legs isn't always what you're trying to get out of a run. Sometimes, you're trying to build up that confidence as well, and those sorts of things going into race day.
Yeah, I agree. The big workouts can be super draining, can be like, yeah, like people talk in like the corporate world of like the Sunday scaries of getting ready for that work week. Whatever day that big workout is, there's definitely scaries the day before that, because it can be daunting. They're hard sessions. My favorite thing to do now that I find makes them a little more approachable is I always do my workouts on the same loop. And for me, it being a loop makes it a little easier mentally, because then in my mind I can block of like if I'm doing a 10K lactate threshold session, I have a loop that is basically 1.8 kilometers, and I can just like I have one loop at a time. I conquer that loop, and then I kind of like reassess where I'm at after that loop. And I find for me personally, the chunking really helps. Just be like one loop at a time, and then I'll think about the next loop once this loop is done.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I kind of it's cool the two different things you said. So I really like the looping, like you said, kind of just keeping yourself. I like chunking things because I like hockey. I like chunking things into threes, so 3 periods. So whatever I do, no matter what sport, I try to chunk it into 3 periods, and I just say only the third is left. Like only I'm in the second period, the third's coming, I'm almost done. So looping it like that is very beneficial for me as well. But one thing I do like doing, which is kind of the maybe what you said, your Andrew, that you go to the same spot to do your looped workouts. Let's say I like to look for a different area, but kind of still keep the same loop. So I really do research and try to find my let's say optimal loop, but I go to a whole different spot to just change the scenery, change the mindset, and then I kind of like looking back at that spot, like, oh, remember that hard workout I did in so and so's neighborhood? It was a really hard day, and I'll always remember that as a hard workout in that neighborhood.
Yeah, I think that's great. So the last point of a failed workout is just cutting a session short, right? We've talked about missing pace, skipping a workout, checking out, having logistical problems. And I think that last one is really, you just shut it in early, go back home, whatever it might be. Exactly. Pull the chute, Tyler. And so I think those are kind of the combinations of failed workouts that you might encounter. And I think everybody has fallen victim to one, if not many of these. But I think there are some strategies that we employ, get ourselves around maybe not failing as many workouts, but also when you fail a workout, what do you do? How do you think about it? And maybe thinking about it is the right place to start, which is the mental game that comes with failing a workout. So what are some of those mental strategies that you guys employ to reframe those failed workouts?
Yeah, that is the beauty of the endurance training, is that if you fail a workout this week, guess what? You got another one that's probably pretty similar next week, so you get another go at it. So I think the first thing for me would be to kind of try to look at that failed workout. It's a great piece of data of like, this is the time that I think looking at and really starting to nerd out on some of the data, like your heart rate, taking a look at weather and kind of the conditions is super good. So in Bryan's case, you said, all right, I had alcohol the night before, went to bed potentially a little bit late, woke up late, so it was in the heat of the day. So maybe next time, let's improve on that one little thing so that I remove one variable. So hopefully it goes a little more smooth next time. So I think trying to fine tune your conditions of your workout can try to help you set up for success in that next workout.
Yeah, and I think the big word there is learn from it. Change that failure into an opportunity to learn, and talking to you guys, like speaking about it, which maybe is another great tip, allowed me to kind of unload, unbox what had happened so I could retrospectively look at those contributing factors that made it a failure. And you're right, just look at like what could you optimize next time to make the conditions a little bit better, to make yourself a little bit more prepared. So learning and sharing and talking with people about those failures and not just internalizing it and shutting the door on it are two great things. What about you, Tom?
I really like the mindset, I guess, of, these bad workouts or bad conditions just build you that more grit. I think also that same idea, as in like it's just more tools in your tool set. So once you're racing or having a hard effort, like Andrew said, the week after, could look back on that hard time and say, you know what, that's those tools I've built during the training block, that heat, the crazy winds, the crazy rain. Maybe I didn't hit my pace or didn't hit my goal distance, but I still got it done in those harder conditions. And those are things that you'll remember for your race, and you'll know that, I've done hard things before. This is just another hard thing that you got to get through.
And that's what kept me from cutting that workout short, was that mentality, the like build the grit now, because I know that that 35th kilometer of the marathon in the fall is going to feel the exact same, and I'm going to need to keep going. And that's why I kept pushing and didn't just shut it in early. So certainly some of those mental games help, and I love that grit mindset. One of the other things I think is the just like zooming out, looking at the block as a whole system rather than looking at that one piece and saying like the whole plan is a failure because of this like micro piece of the plan. Really shifting to the macro and saying like how does this one workout actually impact the success of the full plan of my goals, which like now looking back at one workout, I have 18 rows of 7 days of workouts, of days of exercise, of recovery days, whatever it might be. And if this is my one failure of the whole plan, that's an incredibly successful plan, because there's like, yeah, over 100 days leading up to this race where there's basically something in the calendar every day.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, we talked about analyzing let's call it the failure, or going through what happened and learning from it. But at the same time, what I like about Strava and what's great about, this world is, like you said, the next 7 days, your slate is zero. So you kind of forgive and forget, you learn from it, you move on. Your, next Monday is going to be, everything's back to zero. You restart your volume. So I think that too is kind of cool in a way that, you could, whatever you did last week, it's great. It compounds that fitness, but also at the same time, you're restarting from zero, from scratch, and you got to do it all over again.
Yeah, I think there's also the point of like, don't beat yourself up too much because you don't get anything out of it, right? You said it there. Just wipe this plate clean, learn from it, next page. But I think a lot of people will kind of spiral, and I certainly was during the workout and after the workout. But you give yourself a little bit of time. You take that shower, you reset, get some food into you, and yeah, you can't beat yourself up about a failed workout, because there's going to be plenty more. And if every athlete who failed a workout just stopped going after it after that, there wouldn't be a whole lot of successful athletes.
Yeah, and before we wrap up kind of the strategies, so your workout, I don't know if you have it handy, the pace, but with your big goal, your big marathon goal, you're going for about a 4 minute and 16 second per kilometer average. So that is what you're going towards. And just to kind of like put it live on the record, because I think with a good block, it is very, very achievable. And I think looking back on this workout, once you run the marathon, see how close you get to that goal will be a kind of a cool thing. So what was that average for that piece, for that workout?
I think it was somewhere around 4:30 when all was said and done. I don't have the exacts for that specific segment of the workout. Oh, actually, I have it here. 4:33 is what I have. So overall, like not too bad considering the conditions, and hopefully race day brings somewhat better conditions. And we talked about heat training last week. So if you haven't tuned into that episode, definitely worthwhile. And we explored why that heat actually makes the same pace feel harder. So that was definitely a contributing factor. And hopefully I'm not, drinking wine in a vineyard the night before the marathon.
That'd be real nice.
You never know. But yeah, I think this also just like the idea and concept of these workouts. We have target paces in mind for our main events, but keep in mind race effort and what that effort should feel like. And you need to kind of take into consideration your external factors. Because especially for marathons, Ironmans, I can't help you because they love doing it when the conditions aren't great. But marathons, you're doing it in peak conditions, and often you're training in non-peak conditions. So try to think of what race effort feels like, and don't get too caught up if that is like 5 to 10 seconds, or in this case 15 seconds off of what that target is.
That's a great point. And I'm sure like this is again an experience thing. This is something that you've learned through many blocks. But this is my first serious summer block with marathon pace workouts. I've had 5K pace workouts in a previous block in the summer, but marathon pace is not something that I have like nailed down in terms of what that RPE is. And this is a workout where I should have been prioritizing that RPE feel rather than that pace. And so I was a little too strict and I blew up because of that and a combination of other things. But really interesting. I'm glad we dove into that specifically. I think it's helpful for me, and hopefully it's helpful to listeners as well who have been in this position before. Now we do want to go through a few tips on like how to bounce back. And Tyler, we have a few things in the episode notes here. And this first one is something that I think you're probably guilty of, which is doing revenge workouts. And I think people should avoid the revenge workout, which is if you miss a workout, you fail a workout, you try to double down the next day or a few days later and just like hammer it a little bit extra, throw a double day in there to get that mileage up, do what you feel like you missed out on. But really over the long course of a training block, that just digs a hole for you and probably isn't optimal. Am I right or am I wrong?
I was going to say, reading this, I realized somehow it would come back to me, and I am guilty as charged. I tend to do those revenge workouts, or as you call it, the weekend warrior workouts. But yeah, it's a negative spiral. It kind of does feel cool the first time you do it, but you're kind of in that cycle basically where you miss a couple workouts, you try to catch up on Friday, Saturday, maybe do a nice workout on Sunday, and then you just you crash again early week, the following week. You have to recover for 3-4 days. Then guess what? You missed a bunch of workouts. You got to catch up again. So you're just in that like deadly cycle where you can't really catch a break, and you're always feeling like you're catching up, which is also, I find, not good for your mental game. So step one, don't revenge workout. Trust me, from a revenge workouter, do not do it.
So maybe instead, what you could do, if you have a really hard workout and are just feeling a little bit burnt out, instead of just jumping right into that revenge workout, maybe, as I mentioned before, with not feeling guilty about cutting some mileage, maybe you can swap a GA session of bike, whatever, to a nice recovery session where you just take it nice and easy, let your legs spin, and just use it as kind of a nice day to regroup. Or if you're really beat up, maybe just take a nice rest day and then go business as usual on your next workout the next day, just to really give a nice reset, both physical and mental, and then just right back to it, right back to the next workout, next session, and just let it roll off your chest.
I totally agree. It's not something that most people want to do or even consider as an option, which is taking that rest day, switching something for a recovery day. But a recovery session, for example, like it's still you leaving the door. It's still you going through that like and exercising that muscle inconsistency, but it allows your body to recover so it can bounce back and start to tackle those workouts again. One thing that helped me as well was looking at the trend of my exercise and efforts, especially with Strava Premium now that I have. It shows and can like kind of brief you on exactly what you've been doing the last few weeks. And looking at those trends in relative effort, I saw, that workout that I did was such a spike in effort that I'm not surprised in such a big week already and a workout that was that difficult that it was really difficult for me to accomplish. And looking at the trends of like where I was even 6 weeks ago before this block was kicking off versus my running mileage now is night and day. So like many things are going right, and that one-off failure doesn't mean that like the whole strategy of this block is out the window. So that, and if it really, really went poorly, I would also think about, how do I adjust my next week or two, the next hard sessions that I have to make it more manageable. And that's what I will end up doing. I have a similar session with similar length at a similar pace in 2 weeks, I believe. And if that workout comes and it's so hot, I'll just adjust that a little bit to be something that I can go and hit and successfully accomplish rather than continuing to fail that same workout.
We also mentioned in the past to just look at what went wrong, what you could do better, and those external factors like what you had the night before, your sleep schedule, all that kind of stuff will really indicate on what you could do better next time.
Now, one last piece of like strategies that might help is actually documenting this. And Andrew, have you ever had like a running journal or like taken notes with the runs that you've had? I've never done that personally. I don't think you do, Ty, just like having looked at your like structure and plan setup. But Andrew, I'm curious if that's something that you've employed.
I don't really have a running journal in the sense that I'm writing down notes, but this is the reason why I've started to be very specific with my titles of my activities, so that especially on workouts, as I do workouts, I can kind of look at all my past blocks and kind of see how they went, the progression. So that is why I'm very specific about my end distance of the workout, so that it's very easy for me to pull those up on Strava so that I can look at splits and stuff like that. There is also the private note section in Strava. I've used it sometimes for certain things, as I'm like for like nutrition, if I'm testing different things, fun little science experiments, or doing carb testing. So I do use private notes sometimes on Strava.
Yeah, I realized, I think that's the way. I think I realized you started doing that maybe even last season or the season before. And I kind of started doing that same mindset, is titling my workouts very strategically. And then also now you've probably seen I start writing my carb count, electrolyte count for my long rides in my notes, just so I could look back and see, okay, how much carb am I taking in, and all that kind of fun stuff.
Yeah, very, very helpful. So I think overall, like before we jump into chat time, I think this conversation was helpful. It was for me. I hope it was for you guys too, exploring this topic a little deeper. And I think it's helpful to understand, like, what does it mean to fail a workout? How do you handle that mentally? And what are some strategies that we all employ to bounce back a little bit stronger after failing a session? So I hope, everybody found this helpful, because a lot of what we talked about is really, really going to be applied, I think, during my training block and hopefully yours.
100%.
Now, Tyler, you had quite the weekend, and post this workout that you just had, Bryan, I think you've had a little taste of what it's like and what happens to your legs when you're training for more than one sport. But Tyler, I would love to just dig in a little bit to this training camp, with your big A race being about a month out at this point, and kind of give us a quick overview of the insanity of the weekend warriorness that is you.
Yeah, so I guess it wasn't a full weekend warrior mode because I did train all week. I was going into that training weekend with, I think, 5 or 6 hours of training during the week. So I think another a couple well executed weeks for me, which builds a lot of confidence. But yeah, we had a crazy training weekend. About 20 of us came out for a nice training camp hosted by some local legends here in Ottawa. And yeah, Saturday started out with a heinous bike ride. The weather conditions did not cooperate. This was probably the worst rain I've ever been in my life. Even I would say, even like if I was in a car, it was borderline like would have had to pull over. Pouring rain, couldn't see the road, and we were even caught with a bit of thunder and lightning out on the parkway. So that was pretty freaky. But what was the craziest of all of that was we had about 20 of us out there, right? And everybody's looking around like, what are we doing out here? But nobody pulled the plug. So it was pretty cool to see a big group of us out there just grinding it out and getting that workout done. So that ended up being about a 4-hour ride, a good 120-ish clicks. And then it was, an optional brick run because you can't force everybody to do that kind of workout and then just do and sorry, not to mention we did do repeats on that parkway. So we kept doing out and backs, just pushing the legs, going hard for the out and backs and drafting off each other, taking turns at pulling and stuff like that. So that was quite freaky as well. And then, we get back to the cars and I'm starting to kind of get an art of that in-car transition, we could call it. With these long bricks coming up, I really get ready with the car and have everything set up, put the bike in the car, get the running stuff out and get back going. But yeah, the brick run was pretty spicy as well. I was set out to do about an hour, and somehow I got tricked into doing a good half marathon off of the bike with none the less, but we call him Dr. Oz, Mike Osborne. I think he's getting back to me with the coaching strategies here.
That's good. I mean, it's impressive, one, that nobody pulled the chute given the torrential downpours, and I know you guys got a flat out there too, it seemed. But it sounds like a fun day sleeping on the TT bike in the thunderstorms. And the fact that you not only did like basically a half marathon after that, which like already the legs have left the chat, but the next day you went out for another hard swim plus run. It shows that Ironmen are built differently.
Yeah, so we just, like you said, topped off the weekend with we were supposed to do a long swim into a long run, but the swim got cut short with, again, probably the worst swim conditions I've ever had as well. But again, it was hilarious. The 25 of us still managed to get out in the water. We diverted our trajectory a little bit in the water just to be a bit more safe. But crazy waves, crazy white caps, and we did about half of the prescribed workout. So again, just kind of what we were talking about earlier, those are just tools added to the tool chest. We'll always remember that as a very hard swim that we somewhat executed, even though it was shorter. And then, yeah, most of us also joined in for that another long run off of the swim. And yeah, the legs were definitely not there. And I think that's the importance of a strong group is I don't think I would have done that run, even that swim alone. I think with the group, it really forges like, a pact and everybody's going to do this and we're going to do it together. I would have probably been okay sleeping in that day and just going out for a quick, easy 5K, but got it done with a nice 18 on the back end of that Sunday. So that was a very good week.
Crazy. Two back-to-back 12-hour work weeks basically on the bike, running and swimming.
Exactly.
So
yeah,
that's a lot of volume. I think these are slightly smaller weeks than going into the Maryland Ironman, but I think the intensity is turned up a little bit right now relative to the other training block.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I'm actually on pace. So I actually record my training blocks beautifully on Excel. So I have them lined up right now as I'm technically doing slightly lower volume, like you said, higher intensity, but I'm also sooner in the block. So my week coming up is a down week, and then the 2 weeks leading up here after next week are going to be kind of the peak weeks, and I'll be doing some pretty wild weekend workouts. I think it'll be probably my biggest weekend will be on the 12th, 13th, you could say. So stay tuned.
I think my favorite quote from you, Tyler, was after my long run. And you said, "Oh, that was just about half of my day." And I was like, insanity. I just
Oh yeah.
imagine moving my body for double the amount that I already moved it is so crazy. What is the group that organized this?
This was just kind of like Mike just started adding people that were doing Ironman Ottawa that were in Ottawa. And then like we've come up with, over 50 people in this group chat, and I would say actually about half of them came to this training camp, and actually a couple people from Toronto, shout out to Franklin and Leah, new listeners actually as well. So they were very happy with the weekend. I think we introduced them well to Ottawa and the Ottawa race course, and there was a big group of us out there, and I think it made the community a little bit closer, and I think on race day we'll all be looking out for each other and cheering everybody on.
Yeah, that's incredible. I didn't think of it as an opportunity to recon the course. So, in 30 seconds, what are some of the keys that you learned about the course itself that you would want to share to other athletes?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think the swim, nobody knows what's going to happen on the swim. The Britannia is kind of very unpredictable, could be very windy or smooth like glass. So we just hope for glass on that morning, no wind. And then the bike I think is going to be pretty fast, so save the legs for the run. Couple very steep hills on the run that'll I think shock a lot of people. And with a 2-lap course, I think it'll be the first time and probably even worse the second. So yeah, make sure if you're around the area, I think the course recon will definitely help you.
Nice, love it. Love a course recon. It is nice to know every little bump,
Yeah,
every ascent, descent, and just kind of be comfortable and familiar so that, because into that, 10 plus hour day, once you turn the brain off, knowing the course is a nice thing.
yeah, I think that'll help. The brain turn off mode will happen, and I'll be very happy for that course recon. And I still got a month of reconning, so it'll be very good.
Oh, that's awesome. Now, Tyler, I was waiting for a hot take from you or something related to the episode, like main piece of content, but it never came. But I do have something that I think I don't know if I heard this in a podcast or read it somewhere, but it was essentially the rule of thirds when it comes to the workouts and exercises you do. Because we're talking about failed workouts, which obviously means not everyone's going to feel good. But this was something that came to me as the rule of thirds when you're classifying and looking back at the exercises you've done. 1/3 should feel great. 1/3 should just feel all right. And 1/3 should feel like shit. And if you can strike that balance, it's likely that you're making progress. And I had my share of shit workouts in the last week, but there were also some great workouts. And I think that's what keeps us going. So hopefully everybody can find that balance and have a little bit of shitty workouts as well, because it definitely means you're pushing those limits, which is what we're all about.
That's great. I actually really like that, and it's totally accurate. I think, when you're in the midst of it and you're feeling the pain, you'll remember those shitty workouts just a little more, but it'll make those great ones just even better.
All right, team. Well, that's a wrap on this one. We hope today's episodes reminded you that every athlete has those off days and they don't define your season or your progress.
So if anything that we said today hits home with you, share it with that training buddy that's always by your side, even if you're failing workouts. Post it to your socials and drop us a message if there's any specific training sessions that you've had a big failure in recently. We love hearing about your experiences. And don't forget to join the Boys in Motion on Strava, because that's where all the magic happens, and that's where you'll see our next failed workout.
That's a good one. And just a reminder, our weekly reminder here, we're not coaches, we wish we were. We're not doctors, we wish we were. And we're not sports scientists, but we sure do wish we were. We're just 3 endurance nerds who love sharing the ups and downs of the journey. Always consult with the experts before personalized advice.
I think that was the single best sign off of the medical disclaimer we've ever had. So congratulations to you, Tyler. And for anybody listening, just remember, one failed workout doesn't mean failure. It means you showed up. So keep moving forward, and we'll catch you on the next one.